Hi, my name is Summer. I'm a practicing attorney. I took the July 2015 and I passed it from the first time. So last week, my friend and I were talking, and she recommended that I create a clip and talk to people who are planning on taking the bar and explain how I studied. Hopefully, it will help one of you, at least one of you. So, how did I study for the bar? As you all know, July 2015 had the lowest pass rate. It was only 46.6%, and so many people had to take it again this February. I know some people did not even take it because they could not afford the extra expenses. So, how can you beat it the first time? Let's see. Maybe my method will work with you. How did I prepare for it? I had that mindset that I want whoever is teaching us for the bar to give me a set of material to study from for the bar. That I didn't even want to bother and go outside this material. Give me what I need to study and I'm good to go. Well, that did not happen. You know how they do it. They give you the box I received, it had at least 6 books. One of them for important points, one of them for MBE, one of them for outlines. And I looked at those books and I say, are you kidding me? Where am I supposed to start? Why don't you put all these outlines in one book and give it to me and say, hey, it's ready for you to study? Well, they're not going to do it that way. So, what I did, I started arranging my own material. I prepared the material that I wished someone was going to hand it to me and say, here is the material, study from it. So, I prepared my own material. How did I do it? I started with my outlines. I had my Kaplan outlines, and Kaplan has comprehensive outlines. They're really good. So I had those outlines, and I had outlines from at least 3 of my friends who were really, really good students. And I had a bunch of outlines that I bought from Outline Depot online. I bought them online. So I had all of these sets, but then I decided to create my own set. I didn't want to just get one of those sets and study for it. These people arranged the outlines to fit their style. Their style may be different than mine. And how would I know that they did not leave issues that they understood out? Maybe for them some issues were so easy, so they did not even include them in their outlines. But maybe what they found easy is difficult for me. So if I missed that issue, then tough luck. I'm liking those points if I see that issue on the bar. So what I did, I had my blank copy, and I had Kaplan's, Outline Depot, and 3 sets from different friends that I got. I started with my Kaplan outline. You know, it's a big company. They give you everything you want to study from. They don't take issues out because they don't know which student knows what or comfortable with what. So they have everything in their books. I started with their outline book and I listed all issues that were in the book. Did not plug in rules or anything. I started with the issues. I listed all of them. After I listed all of them from Kaplan, I start looking at the other sets to see, do they have the same issues I have? Do they have more issues? I don't care if they have less issues because that's not going to really benefit me. But I look to see if they have more issues that I don't have right now in my copy. Maybe Kaplan missed something. I don't know. At this point, I really can't trust anyone having perfect outlines. I need to be able to create my own. So when I went over all these outlines and I saw that none of these sets has an extra issue that I don't have in my outlines, now I know 100% that list, the one I have, has every single issue that can possibly show up on the bar. Now I'm comfortable. I have all the issues. It's up to me now to supplement them. So what I did, I would look at those sets of outlines and I would see which rule makes more sense to me. Assault. Some rules used simple language I'm comfortable with. I had it when I was first year law student. Some outlines used different words like I don't know what that means. So I plugged in the rule that I'm comfortable with. Definition of assault. I took those rules and I plugged them under the issue. I did the same thing for every single issue I have in my outlines. I plugged in the rules and then I broke down the rules into their elements and I put the definition of every element. And under every element, I had examples. Kaplan book is amazing when it comes to examples. They have so much that there is no way you go over their examples and you still don't understand the issue or which fact trigger it. So I had every issue, rules, break down the rules, define them, under every element, example to explain that element. And then at the end, after having the general rule and the breakdown of the element, I would have an example that covers the entire thing, not just one element, cover the entire rule. So I would have example to explain it too. That helped me figure out what kind of pattern would trigger that issue. So even if something on the bar did not show up to be the same exact thing as this language, at least it will be similar and I would know which issue to talk about. So I did this for every single subject. I plugged in all the rules, broke them down into elements, defined the elements, put example for the elements, and then put example for the entire rule. I did the same thing for every single subject that can be tested on the bar. After I did that, I left my outlines on the side and I started doing 100 questions of MBE for each subject. And the reason I did this is because first, I wanted to test my understanding, how strong I am on the MBE, and I gotta tell you, I was not strong at all. Every single set of MBE I did, those 100 questions for every subject, I had 50 and 55. I did not even go to 60. So that was extremely disappointing, but I was not discouraged because I just started. So at least now I know where I'm standing. So I did 100 con law, 100 torts, 100 criminal procedure, 100 not community property, 100 evidence for all of those that can be tested on the MBE. And then I reviewed those questions. I reviewed them. I tried to understand why I got them right and why I got them wrong. And then I went over the answers in details and I compared those answers with the outlines I have to make sure there is nothing in these answers that I don't have in my outlines. So, the MBE answer gives you a rule. So I made sure that these rules are already in my outlines. And since I pulled every single issue, I only had maybe out of all the MBEs I did, maybe 2 or 3 rules that I did not have in my outlines. So when I was done, I was comfortable knowing I have almost everything. I mean, not almost, I really have everything that can be tested on the bar. Now I have really comprehensive outlines. So when I finished all the MBE questions for the subject that will be tested on the MBE, I printed out my outlines and I enlarged the font. My eyes were getting tired, so much reading that I was getting so exhausted. And I knew I have to figure out a way to make my eyes comfortable. So what I did, I would print out the outlines in 16 point font size, just so I can make my eyes more comfortable. And then I would go subject by subject. I would go over the first subject. I would read the whole thing in details. I didn't skim. I read very carefully and I made changes. I edit my outlines. I made notes like this doesn't make sense. If something I didn't understand, I would put question mark next to it, like look into this. This is a problem. You need to look into it. So I did this for all my subjects and then I went on my computer and I made all the changes I wanted to make. And then I printed out my outlines one more time and I skimmed through them to make sure I'm understanding everything and everything looks good to me. Now I have comprehensive outlines. They're edited, they're good to go for me to study. I put those in my binders. I arrange them in the binders from the most expected to the least expected on the bar. I made my own prediction. I know some professors made official prediction for what may show up on the bar, but that comes out about 2 weeks before the bar. This isn't enough time. Kaplan has a spreadsheet on their website. Unfortunately, the one I looked at was missing the last 3 administrations, so I had to make 3 columns on my sheet and go back to calbar.org and check every administration, what subject they had on it, and highlight next to it. So I had full sheet for the past 10 years or 12 years. And then I could see the pattern, what showed up, what did not show up, how many times it showed up, how often it shows up. And then My prediction was like community property was gonna show up, con law. I thought torts was gonna show up, and crimes was gonna show up. Torts did not show up. Did not. I did not expect business association to show up, and it did. And it was a really complicated question. It was crossover with professional responsibility. It killed us. So now I have all my outlines and my prediction. So I arranged my outline in that order. I had my professional responsibility outline on the top because professional responsibility appears every administration and it did not on the February administration. So I knew 100% it was going to show up in July. And then con law was my next. And it actually did show up on the July exam. So that's how I start studying. That's how I arrange my outlines. Now that I have all my outlines nicely arranged in binders, I know they're comprehensive. I know they have every single issue. I know they have the rules and examples, so many examples explaining every rule and every concept. I went to baressays.com. I bought the $199 subscription because I thought it's really worth it. It gives you access to all the graded essays, and they're arranged by subject and by grade. So I know so many people say, look at the low graded and the high graded essays and see what's the difference. I honestly did not find this to make sense or beneficial. If I have enough time to review the low graded, I would just have enough time to memorize and practice more. But I don't. We have very limited time to prepare for the bar. So what I did, I printed out about 5 questions and their answers for each subject from bar essays, and I selected only the high graded questions and answers. So I would, if the highest was 70, I would just print out the 70. I did not go near the 60 and 65. This is not what I need. This isn't the model that I need to follow, and neither do you. So I printed out, for torts I had 5 sample questions and answers, the high graded ones. For con law, the same thing. For community property, I did this for every subject, and I plugged them under every subject. So con law had 5 answers beneath it. Torts had 5 answers. Every one of them had 5 answers at least to practice. Now my essays and my outline binders are ready for me. I put them aside. I moved on to MBEs. I collected all the MBE questions that I was going to do from Kaplan. I hated the one online. I could not read them. I struggled with them because the font was too small. I was staring at my screen nonstop. I got to the point where I woke up one night and I could see everything 4. And I freaked out in the morning and I ran to the eye doctor and I say, I have crossed eyes. And she said, you don't have crossed eyes, you're just too exhausted. Have you been staring at the screen? And I said, yes. And she said, you need to stop. Well, I can't stop, but I can find an alternative. So instead of doing the MBE questions from online from Kaplan, I used their books only. And I bought a question from the NCBE. They have 4 samples. Each sample is 100 questions. I bought those. I took some from my friends. They had hard copies, and I used the one from Kaplan's. I had about 2,000 MBE questions on hard copies. I arranged those together. I kept them together. This is my second stack. Now I have my outlines and essays to practice on, and I have my MBEs. And then I did the same thing for performance test. I went on baressays.com and I printed out about 30 questions and their answers. Again, the high graded one. I made sure I have every single type of performance test that could show up. Summary judgment, which I hated the most, and it ended up showing on the July 2015. Opinion letter, persuasive, argumentative. I had each one of them. I arranged those in separate binders. I had all of them. Question, answer, of course, library and file too. Now I have all the material in the world that I need to study from. I don't have to be disorganized, pulling materials from here and there. I actually have a picture of the stack of binders that I was studying from, but I don't have it handy right now. This much. My binders were this thick when you put them on top of each other. I put them in 3 stacks, and I started with the first one. I started with my outlines. Now that they're edited and comprehensive and they're good to go, I started memorizing. I took out my hard copy and I started memorizing from the first word to the last word. I went over the first subject. I memorized the outlines. When I memorized those outlines, I decided to do 200 MBE questions for that subject. And then I grade myself. And I noticed improvement. I noticed that I went up to 60, which I did not do before. Then I went to my second subject and I memorized it, not reviewed it, not skimmed through it, memorized it from the beginning to the end. Then I did 200 questions for that subject, and again I graded myself. I did the same thing for all the subjects. At this point, I already reviewed my outlines the first time, because I was already collecting all the rules and issues from different sets of outlines. I edited my outlines, so that's my second time going over them, and now I memorized them, so that's my third time going over them. And I did MBE questions, 200 for each subject. If I noticed I'm doing good in the MBE, I mean, at this point, 60 is really not good. But if I noticed I'm struggling with certain issue, I would go back to that issue and review it in my outlines one more time and review the explanation. So I finished all the subjects with 200 questions for each subject. Now I put everything on the side. And then I decided to start over. But this time, I did memorize my outlines for the 4th time. And yes, for the 4th time. But this time I did not do subject 200 MBE. This time I did subject, 5 sample questions essays. So I would go over the subject one more time, the 4th time, and I would memorize, not skim, not review, memorize. Go over them again one more time in details. And every time I finish a subject, I go over the essays. I personally could not write out the entire essay because I had problem with my neck, my hand, my arm, and my fingers. So for me, if I try to write out every single essay that I printed out, by the time I get to the bar, good luck. There is no way I can write out the bar because I hand wrote the entire bar. As you can imagine, this was painful. So I had to preserve my arm for that. So what I did, I would read the question and I would issue spot. And once I'm done, I would compare my issues to the answer. And again, that's like 82 points answer. That's really good graded answer. So if my issues match that answer, then I'm good. So that's what I did. I would compare my issues to the answer. If I did good, that's good. I'm in good shape. I won't stop though. I would go to the next question. I would issue spot and then I will compare it with the answer. I did this for the entire 5 questions. I did not leave anything out thinking, you know what, I'm doing good, I'm moving on. I practiced all the 5 questions and I looked at the structure. I made sure they have the same issues as I did. I looked at the structure. I paid attention to how the student wrote the answer, how he analyzed it or she analyzed it, in which order, how did they organize the answer. I noticed so many students will be like the issue and then the rules, they leave space between the two just to make it very clear to the grader. Like, see, I listed the issue, I listed the rule, and here is my analysis and here is my conclusion. I did the same thing for all the subject. I did the outlines and I practiced the essays. Now, I hated evidence so much that I wasn't doing so great on it. So when I finished all these 5 questions and I'm still not doing good, I decided to go back to baressays.com, print out more sample answers, and work on them. I kept doing the same until I mastered it. So now I'm done with all my subjects and my issue spotting. At this point, this is my 4th time reviewing my outlines, and I did practice on the essays. I'm gonna put those aside. I think I'm doing great. My issue spotting is matching that sample answer that's graded 80 and 82 and 85. I'm good. I put the essays on the side. I put the outlines on the side. I'm going to do MBEs and MBEs only. In the morning, I will do one subject. In the evening, I will do the other. I made sure to do 200 in the morning at least and 200 in the evening. I needed to master those. So I started doing every subject MBEs and grade myself. And at this point, I noticed that my grade jumped up to 80, 75 and 80. I started with 50, 55, and now I'm at 80 and 85. That's great. I did all the subject MBEs. I finished all of them. I graded myself, and it was consistent. Every single set of MBEs I did went up to 80 and 85. One of them, I remember, it was 75. A bit disappointed, 75 still good. Now that I'm done with the MBE, I decided, you know what, it's time for my performance test. I started with performance test. Again, I could not write out the entire answer because of the problem in my hand. So what I decided to do, I decided to highlight and write a brief on separate sheet. So what I do, I would read the question, I would highlight the call of the question, make sure I'm sticking to the call of the question, and then I would write out the rules. This is the rule. This is what I'm supposed, which case goes underneath. This is the rule. This is the case it goes underneath. Which fact apply to it? So just like skeletal outline, but not for the essays or for the outlines, it was for the performance test. If when I find the rule, I'll put this rule in pink highlighter, and then I will find the case and the fact that goes beneath it, and then I would highlight those in pink. Now I know these two go together. I would go to the next rule. I would highlight it in blue, and then I go to the fact and the case that go beneath it, and then I would highlight those in blue. I know now those two go together. I did the same thing for at least 20 performance tests. I made sure to look at the structure very, very, very carefully. I was so terrified by performance tests. So I was worried that this is what's going to bring me down on the bar. So I made sure when I'm looking at the performance test, in my head I'm memorizing summary judgment. That's how it's supposed to look like. Opinion letter. That's how it's supposed to look like. And there were certain paragraphs in the bottom. If you have any more question and if you need more clarification, please let me know. So I kept that in mind. Opinion letter. Okay, so I would start with a paragraph that say, you asked me to research this issue for you, and here is my finding. And then go from there. And then at the end, say, if you have more question or if you need more explanation, please let me know. So I memorized that structure. I kept it in my head. This is how opinion letter should look like. I did the same thing for every type. It was now that I know I'm not having hard time with the call of the question, I'm not having hard time finding the rules, I'm not having hard time figuring out which case goes under which rule. It was easy for me to spot them. I needed to make sure I'm getting the structure correctly. What's the point of knowing everything if I'm completely analyzing the whole thing in the wrong structure? Everything is in different direction. I'm not going to get my point. So I practiced at least 20 performance tests. At this point, I memorized my outlines so many times. I did enough MBE questions that my grade went up, and it's so obvious because it was so consistent, and I practiced so many performance tests. I'm done. I'm ready. I studied everything for the bar. Am I gonna stop here? No, you're not gonna stop here. You have few days left for the bar. Hopefully you had a schedule that you followed strictly. And if you followed strictly, you should have left at least 1 week free before the bar. Now that you have about few days free and you're done studying, you need to go back, and that's exactly what I did. I went back to my outline. Yes, I went back to my outlines. I started subject by subject, but this time I skimmed through. I really looked really quick at the examples. If something I felt like I still need to refresh my memory, something I felt like, oh, I can't remember this rule. What was it? And then I will go back and I would skim through my rules and my outlines and just refresh my memory one more time. Because here I am, I'm going to take the bar in like almost 6 days. So I would refresh my memory, review the rules really quick, and then I went back to my MBEs, just looked at the highlighted stuff, in the answers only. I moved on to the essays and I looked at the structure. I don't have issue spotting at this point. I know what goes where, but I needed to remember the structure. So I reviewed the answer just to look really quick at the structure. This is what they're talking about. This is what they're talking about. This is how they arrange it. Issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, IRAC. Remember IRAC. As long as I'm taking the exam, IRAC is ringing in my ears. And then I went again to performance test and I just looked at the structure. One for each type. Just look at the structure really quick. And I was good. I have about 2 days left for the bar. It's time to relax, restore your energy, take a deep breath, make sure you have all your stuff ready. Don't wait to the last moment, especially if you're staying in a hotel and you're going by yourself. Have everything ready in advance. Make sure nothing that violates the rules, and you shouldn't be having any problems. I personally took all the binders with me to the hotel room, all of them. I did not only take my skeletal outlines, I took every single binder with me just to review, just in case. And the nice thing about reviewing examples is the odds are that you saw one of these patterns on the exams that you practiced. I practiced so many exams that the real property exam we had, half of it was taken from the exam they had about 2 years ago. I couldn't remember where I saw the exam, where I saw the pattern. I kept thinking to myself during the bar, this is so familiar. I know they're talking about restriction on alienation. I can't remember where I read it, but I'm positive this is what I have to talk about. See, it's already stuck in my head because I reviewed it so many times and I did not just memorize it like some students did. Unfortunately, some students just memorized them. They looked at the question and they said that's how the answer should look like. And that did not help them and they did not pass. You don't want to memorize, you want to understand which fact trigger which rule. That's how you have to see it. Don't just memorize it. Because the real property essay we got, the first half was from one of the prior administrations, and the second half of the essay was from a different administrations. So they took half from here, half from there, they merged them together, changed the names, and it showed up on the July 2015. So it's very important not to just memorize. So some of the tips I would like to talk about before I finish. I know it's a long talk and I really hope that this helped you or will help you, but just a few tips I want to talk about really quick. You need to treat every single issue on your outline like everything is going to show up on the exam. Some students said, I'm not going to study intentional tort because negligence is most likely to show up on the bar. And guess what? Negligence did not show up, intentional tort did. Those students could not answer the question. Some people said, water right. It only shows up 5% of the time on the exam. Well, you don't know if that percent is your turn. It's going to show up. On community property, almost 3 of the issues came from very, very minor outlines that I had in my copy. Child support, it was the last 2 pages of my 80 pages outline. Personal gift, it depends on the value, if it's now personal property or still community property. I had like 3 lines only in my 80 pages outline about it. So don't say that, okay, Kaplan or Barbary said this is only gonna show up 5% of the time, so I'm gonna ignore it. I personally deleted those from my outlines. I did not want to look at them. I didn't want to be disturbed by those. So I treated the first word of my outline the same as the last word of my outline. They're all the same. They're all fair game. Each one of them can show up on the bar that you're taking. So don't leave anything out. The second thing I want to say is you really don't need Facebook and Instagram at that time or Twitter. I noticed so many people left the first session of the bar, and before they go into the second session, they were on Facebook talking about the presidential race, talking about having lunch, and while they were supposed to be having lunch, and refreshing for the second session of the first day. You really have no business being on Facebook. Your mind is getting distracted by something else. Now you're sitting there going on your phone. Who commented on my status? Who liked it? Who said something? Let me reply to this and let me reply to that. This isn't what you're supposed to be focused on. It's only 3 days, get them over with, and you have Facebook for the entire time you're waiting for the result. And hopefully, if you pass, for the whole time after that. So that's something you need to stay away from. I personally noticed that most people who were on Facebook the entire time when we were preparing for the July bar, unfortunately, did not pass. I cannot say that the Facebook and Instagram caused them to fail, but it is a huge distraction. I also wanted to mention friends and family. It's very important to let your friends and family know that this is the time for you to be focusing on yourself and for you to be focusing on the bar. I also noticed so many people 1 week before the bar, they're looking all fancy and going for fancy dinners and like huge family events and all these things. And this isn't what you need before the bar. Before the bar, you're supposed to be preparing for the bar, restoring your energy, staying focused, keep the information in your head, not get distracted by something else that's going to get your attention completely away from it into something else. I can't think of anything other than that at this point. If I think of something else, I will either edit this clip or I will add another one. But so far, this is it. Wish you all the best of luck. And if you know me and you know how to get to find me and you think I may be able to help you with something, please feel free to reach out to me. Good luck.